There's a specific kind of place that exists in every city. It opens late, it closes when the last person leaves. Nobody goes there because they have somewhere to be. They go there because they've run out of everywhere else. It's not a safe space, exactly. It's something more precise than that. It's the room where the performance finally gets too exhausting to maintain, where what you are underneath all the noise starts to surface, quietly, into the cup in front of you. Coffee Talk has been building that place across 3 games, 2 cities, and 6 years of storytelling. The first game opened in Seattle in 2020. The second returned 3 years later with what the first one left unfinished. Tokyo opens May 21st. Before it does, here's what the cafe has been trying to say. The world of Coffee Talk is not ours. Not quite. Humans exist alongside elves, vampires, werewolves, mermaids, succubi. The city is Seattle. The year is 2020. The fantasy is woven into the traffic and the apartment listings and the news cycle. And none of that is actually the point. The games could have made the fantasy the conflict, humans versus the other, integration politics, species tension. That's the obvious move. Coffee Talk 1 understands something more interesting. When you put creatures of myth into the same city, the same jobs, the same relationships, they stop being mythological, they start being tired, they start carrying the same weight everyone else carries. Creative failure, loneliness, love that doesn't fit neatly into any category. That's the Seattle of Coffee Talk. The elves are overworked designers. The vampires are tired journalists. The succubus is navigating a relationship that ended badly and never quite resolved. Nobody in this world is spectacular. They're just people, shaped differently, exhausted the same way. You are the barista. No dialogue, no quests, no map. Just the counter, the rain, and whoever walked in tonight. The mechanic is the argument. In most games, the player pushes forward into the world, and the world reveals itself in response. In Coffee Talk, you hold still. The world comes to you. The only power you have is what you put in the cup, and whether you were paying enough attention to know what someone needed. Freya is the anchor, human, a writer, the one who sits at the counter long enough to notice things she isn't supposed to. By the end, she has figured out something about the cafe that changes the shape of everything that came before it. Bailey's is the designer, elf, talented, tangled in a history with a succubus named Lua that neither of them has fully processed. His story is about the cost of running from something you already chose. Hyde is the one watching from outside the warmth. Detective coded, quietly assembling a picture that nobody asked him to assemble. His suspicion is the audience's suspicion. The feeling that this cafe is not just a cafe, and that the game knows it, and that it isn't going to say so directly. And then there's Neil. Neil is the reason the final act of Coffee Talk 1 shifts entirely. The less said before you've played it, the better. What matters is this. By the end of the first game, the cafe has revealed itself to be something with intention. Something that chooses who it lets in. Something that has been doing this for a very long time. The season closes on Freya knowing something she can't unknow. That's not a cozy ending. That's a setup. The second game opens in September 2023, 3 years after the events of the first. The city is the same. Some of the regulars are back, but the stories have moved. This is what Hibiscus and Butterfly understands that most sequels don't. The passage of time isn't just a number. It's the accumulation of consequence. Relationships formed in CT1 have had 3 years to evolve, complicate, calcify. You're not walking into the same room. You're walking into the version of the room that remembered everything. The counter remembers. Lua returns. The succubus from Bailey's history. No longer a peripheral figure, but a center of gravity. Her arc in the second game is about identity in a world that keeps defining you by what you are instead of who you are. The magical creature labeled by her nature, expected to perform that nature, penalized when she doesn't. It's one of the quieter arguments the series has been building since the first game. The fantasy taxonomy doesn't liberate these characters, it traps them. The cafe is the one place the label gets set down. Hyde is still watching, still building his picture, 3 years closer to whatever it is he suspects. In Coffee Talk 1, the cafe was a discovery, a place you stumbled into and gradually understood. In Hibiscus and Butterfly, it's a continuity. The space didn't change, the people who needed it did. By the end of the second game, something has been established quietly and without announcement. The cafe isn't a setting, it's a character. And like any character, it accumulates. It carries what it's witnessed. The weight of everyone who sat at the counter and left something behind they didn't know they were leaving. Tokyo is going to inherit all of it. New city, new mythology, the same question asked in a completely different room. Tokyo replaces the Western fantasy framework. The elves, the vampires, the werewolves, with yokai. Spirits and entities from Japanese folklore. The shift isn't cosmetic. In Western fantasy, the non-human is typically coded as threat or wonder. The dangerous other, the magical exception. In Japanese folklore tradition, yokai are liminal. They exist between states, between worlds, between life and what comes after. That's not a genre swap, that's a thesis upgrade. The series always understood that the supernatural in Coffee Talk isn't meant to be spectacular. It's meant to make visible what's already true about human experience. The loneliness, the displacement, the feeling of existing in a state of in-between. Seattle's elves and vampires were vehicles for that. Tokyo's yokai are that. The liminality isn't flavor, it's the point. Vin runs this cafe. The barista has an assistant now, and that assistant carries a fractured past with consequences still unresolved. He can sense Ayame, but not fully see her, which means he's operating on partial truth, and partial truth is the most dangerous kind of knowing. Ayame is a ghost, recently deceased, unable to pass to the next plane because something is unresolved, something she doesn't fully understand yet. She exists in the space between what she was and what she's supposed to become. She cannot move forward until something is said, something acknowledged, something finally let through. The cafe is the only room where she can exist while she figures out what that is. Buku accompanies her, the anchor, the one who stays close enough to hold the thread. Jun is a musician, a failed album, a career that collapsed before it fully formed. His problem is entirely human. No magic, no mythology, no supernatural weight. That's intentional. The series has always understood that the most honest stories don't require the extraordinary to be true. Jun's grief is the same grief as Ayame's, just worn differently. And then Hendry returns, from Seattle. The thread that connects both cities, both eras, both sets of stories, the proof that this isn't three separate games and three separate worlds. It's one world, one cafe at different addresses, the same counter, asking the same question it's always been asking. In Seattle, the cafe held the living. In Tokyo, it holds the dead. Same counter, same question. What do you need to be able to leave? Ayame is the series' thesis made literal. Every character who has ever sat at this counter has been some version of what she is, caught between where they were and where they needed to go, unable to move forward because something remained unspoken. The cafe is the room where unspoken things finally get words. Freya knew it. Hyde suspected it. Lua felt it. Ayame simply cannot pretend otherwise. These aren't cozy games. They're confession booths with better music. And Tokyo just built the most honest room yet. 3 games, 2 cities, 6 years. The cafe keeps changing its address. The question stays the same. What does a place become when it's the only room in the world where you're allowed to be exactly what you are? Not a hero, not a threat, not a category or a species or a label, just the thing sitting at the counter. Finally, out of the energy it takes to pretend otherwise? That's what Coffee Talk figured out before most games thought to ask. Coffee Talk Tokyo opens May 21st. The counter is waiting. Subscribe. The cafe has more to say than it's letting on.